until 6 o'clock. Everybody, so 6 o'clock on the clock, so I will call meeting order of the regular council meeting of City of Beaumont City Council on Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022 at 6 p.m. I'll begin with, as you always do, with our land acknowledgement, which is we are pleased to be here today, traditional territory of Treaty 6. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be a First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. As we gather here in the traditional territory of Treaty 6, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have ongoing responsibility to protect and honor all of life. Next, I'll have a drop to the agenda. Administration, Ms. Winter, any changes to the agenda this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. Administration does not have any amendments to the agenda this evening.
Thank you very much. Member of Council willing to move the adoption of the agenda as circulated. Councillor Miller, Ashley.
Sure, I move the November 22nd, 2022 council agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I will ask council to vote. And this evening, Councillor McGough-Swaim is detained away on work obligations. He won't be here this evening. It's just 6 of us this evening. So please vote, council, on the motion. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is consent agenda. Please put it on the screen if you could, Ms. Winter, at your convenience. The consent agenda includes 5A, 5B, 6G, 6H, 6I, and 10A. Is a member of council willing to move the adoption of the consent agenda, or any changes they want to make to the consent agenda as previously circulated? Seeing none, Councilor Van Newkirk. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would move that the following items be included on the consent agenda this evening. Item 5A, regular council meeting, November 8th, 2022. 5B, special council meeting, November 15th, 2022. Item 6G, appointment of council to the Beaumont Municipal Library Board and Youth Council. Item 6H, council policy C39, recreational facility allocation policy approval. 6I, assessment services agreement renewal update, and 10A, regional initiatives update. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, council, please vote on the motion. And that carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Next on our agenda, there's no items for open forum. Is that right, Ms. Winter? Thank you very much. On to our first order of business, which is 6A, presentation of final digital master plan. I believe Ms. Bozo Hudak will be presenting along with Ms. Katie Hayes from MNP. I believe we have several items that are time sensitive. We've got to about 6:30 for this presentation, then a 6:30 presentation, and a 7 o'clock presentation. It's somewhat time sensitive. So we'll try and stick to as time as best we can, but these are important presentations and we'll give them the time they need. We'll try and stick to that as best we can. So with that, please begin your presentation and be mindful the microphone has to be very directional. Is that me? No, it's not me.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, and the public. My name is Jennifer Boso Hudak, and I'm the Director of Corporate Analytics and Technology for the city. And with me is Katie Hayes from MNP Digital to present Beaumont's first digital master plan. We have provided you with some tablets that you can look at for mobile devices as we go through the presentation, but we'll begin and I'll turn it over to Katie.
Great. Thank you, Jen. I'm excited to be here tonight to co-present the city's 2022 to 2025 Digital Master Plan. The plan is being shared with you and the community in 2 formats, a PDF report as well as a public-facing website. The PDF report encompasses the plan as a whole, along with a What We Heard report. This highlights the results of the stakeholder engagement activities that ultimately set the direction for the plan. Many of this stakeholder input was presented during the Committee of the Whole Digital Master Plan update in September. Based on your feedback, we have added a page that encompasses what we learned from you as City Council when we conducted interviews in the spring. I'll now walk you through the content of the PDF report.
Technology and digital, right? Thought I mentioned that.
I know. Okay.
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 Perfect. If you want to move just to the executive summary page, and then I'll start walking through that. Thank you. The executive summary provides an overview of the process that was taken to create the digital master plan and makes an important note that this plan is not just about technology, it's about people, programs, services, and strengthening community connections. The report then defines digital as an action that inspires creativity, collaboration, and a commitment to challenging the status quo in pursuit of service excellence. This is done by leveraging technology, data, and innovation to enhance internal operations and citizen services. If you continue scrolling, you'll make it to the outcomes page. Awesome. The outcomes expected through the implementation of the plan include increased transparency, trust, and connectivity, as well as opportunities to grow skills and develop capacity to use new tools. In the plan, we also wanted to highlight how this work will advance Council's strategic plan by focusing on the following 3 objectives. Beaumont is where innovators and technology entrepreneurs can make their ideas come alive. Beaumont fosters an environment of innovation and leadership and seeks partnerships to envision and enable neighborhoods of the future. And the city's technology infrastructure and systems support enhanced transparency and enable more effective interactions with citizens. If you continue through the report, we've included a what we heard summary that highlights learnings from our stakeholder engagement and is a portion of what we've included in the what we heard report that's contained in the appendix. The following section in the report is really the details of the digital master plan that set the direction for the City of Beaumont's digital journey for the next 3 years. The plan is comprised of 6 work streams, with each stream consisting of 3 to 7 activities. Activities include things such as projects, initiatives, and ongoing tasks that will contribute to the achievement of the outcomes described earlier in the report. These activities within the roadmap and timing of completion is subject to funding through the city's budgetary process. These activities encompass foundational work that is necessary in order to ensure Beaumont is set up for long-term success with technology and data and able to drive innovation. Lastly, the report includes a summary of progress to date. The city included this information in order to demonstrate a commitment to Beaumont's digital future. On this page is also a link that does take you to the city's digital master plan website. The website was created as a tool to drive ongoing communication and engagement with the digital master plan. Here you can find a brief description of the activities that were identified in the PDF report. The website also has a page dedicated to sharing updates on the city's continued progress. As activities are undertaken and completed, the city will be able to share updates with the community here. We've given you a mobile device with the website link loaded if you would like to click through and explore that when you have the chance. And before I wrap up, I did want to extend a thank you to all those who were involved in the creation of this digital master plan, from our project team and city leadership to the many citizens, stakeholders, and other business and community leaders who shared their unique stories and perspectives. We're very grateful for your time and contributions. And I'll now turn it back to Jen for any closing comments.
Council, if you have any questions, we're done our presentation.
Thank you, ladies, for their presentation. Appreciate that. And the digital thing is actually quite interesting, I'm technology challenged, so even I opened it. It's a good start. Questions from council members for our presenters this evening on the digital master plan. Let's come back to us from previous meetings. Councillor McCook, Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you, and thank you for this plan. It is thorough, and I think it really shows kind of where we want to go as a city. So appreciate that. I said it before, and I think it bears repeating. And it was on the report. An easy to use kind of accessible city app would be great, and I think a lot of citizens have reached out about that. And it would be a good way for people to really access information easily, because sometimes social media is just whatever's pushed to you. So I thought there were some interesting points that we heard from the development community. Some of the points they made were not necessarily digital related, but more process related, which was interesting. So while I understand that we're shifting more things and processes digitally, and that normally increases efficiencies, I also noted that some staff said that it would improve services and lower costs for residents. Obviously, initially, the shift to digital comes with a cost to residents. So how would we see costs lower in the future, and in what areas?
Each project will have their own capacity building framework. So when we talk about costs, it's the time lag that happens when you're waiting for information going back and forth between the citizen application and using development as a example, and to our planning department. So that back and forth becomes reduced. So we're opening up more capacity. So when you talk about cost, it's adding that capacity and reducing the repeated functions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. And one of the largest barriers listed was that people prefer face-to-face interactions in addition to that. So how are we kind of balancing the need for the shift to digital, as well as also allowing people to have access to more personal interaction?
It's not going to be a shift. It's going to be the balancing of it. So we're still going to have that front-facing communication and frontline interaction. What's going to make it easier is the actual individuals that prefer the digital. They can do it 24/7. If they need to come to the office and we need to show or train a citizen, we'll have that ability at our front desks.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. And one more question, Mayor.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I just noted on the roadmap, the disaster recovery plan. Is this something that's brand new to us, or this is? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Kat. Appreciate that. Councilman Newkirk, followed by Councillor Tessier. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Some good points brought forward by Councillor McCook. I was going to also ask about the let's not forget face-to-face communication thing. So I appreciate that answer. One of the things that became on my radar this summer, and it was the first time I heard it, was folks in the community suggesting that it would be nice to have access to internet in parks and at different places. And I know there are smart benches in the city of Edmonton, and then there's different poles and Wi-Fi parks and all that kind of stuff done. And faster free, and I'm looking at survey results, faster free internet, free wireless internet to the cities of Beaumont. I'm just wondering, how do we start to work that into the community plan and community building in general?
What we're waiting for is the broadband to be completed, and then the IoT devices. You'll see in the 10-year capital plan that we've added those in the growth plan as far as adding those devices within the parks areas. We've also have in our technology replacement the additional access points within our public buildings that we know the Wi-Fi is poor. So we've already built those components in, and that's part of our 10-year that we've worked through.
Gotcha. And I think I anticipated half of that answer, and the other half I think is good news, is that it's not all lumped into one place in the budget, right? Like it's kind of sprinkled throughout in the different
Correct.
areas based upon the different needs for some of the infrastructure. Older cinder block needs more than, newer construction with drywall, right? So, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, and what we're trying to do as well is with all the capital projects coming in, we're trying to align if there's a technology component of it, when can we actually do that? So when you look at the 10-year plan, all those discussions have happened so that knowing full well we don't have the IT infrastructure today, we know it's coming in 2 years. That's why you'll see some of those infrastructure projects later to make that alignment.
Yeah, no, that's great. Appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Tessier. Renee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and great presentation. I really like the tablet that we're getting for to keep, so that's nice. I like the roadmap. I'm gonna kind of stick to the website and service portal. You know, a lot of this is going to be in the background until the public actually see a new website and a new service portal and that reaction from the city with the residents, right? Can you kind of talk to me what that's looking like and where we're at kind of right now?
You'll see in the 2023 budget that we've put in for a website service portal with the service experience office. We have to do a lot of optimization workflows to allow us to provide a proper website that integrates with a lot of our technology and software and behind the scenes so citizens can access it seamlessly. So what we're hoping to do is get a lot of the architecture worked through at the beginning of the year so that by the end of the year, we'll be able to have the aesthetics completed and those focus groups testing out those applications that we're going to put forward.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Obviously, yeah, you need a lot of the background work already in that website before it's launched. And that's going to be a huge change for us, I think, because it's where everyone goes and it's where we send a lot of the residents, and it's even people looking into our city. You go to websites, right? So yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Councillor. We have a Councillor Parner, followed by Councillor Miller. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you very much for all the work on this. It's daunting to say the least. I don't want this to sound too cynical, but I've seen a lot of changes that have come this way in terms of the website, and it's probably in my 3 terms on council, 3 times on council, we've seen it almost every time I've been on. What's different this time? I guess I want to know what's the significant difference that this time it's going to actually not be behind again. Like, can we get ahead instead of always catching up and changing it and making it better? Like, I really want to see this happen. This is something we've been asking for a long time.
There's a couple of components, and I'm going to speak to the administration team that has been working through the service experience office and the digital experience that we've noted through the public engagement. We've done a lot of preliminary work that's allowing us to have a good focus on what we need to deliver. The amount of public engagement that occurred during this digital master plan provided a sound base for us to actually understand what the citizens want. So as far as when you talk about the upgrades that happened in the past for the website, I'm not sure that occurred in the way we've gone through and put an in-depth focus on that. The other thing that's happening is because a lot of the software we have needs to have strong interaction and communication back and forth with the website to allow it seamless. So we've made a very concerted effort to understand all of the touch points that our administration utilizes and facilitates to engage with citizens. And we understand what we need to remove and what we need to make better. And the way we've done that is through the analysis and the work we've done with other projects within the city. So we're kind of using a lot of the parallel projects that would have been done in isolation, gathering that information and providing a more fulsome solution.
I hope this time we do get there. And I guess the concern is that we have to spend a lot of money on faith, and we don't see as has been mentioned already, we don't see the end result till we've already spent that money. And that's a hard sell. It really is.
The one thing that we can do and facilitate a lot more touch points and times where we can actually bring in focus groups to actually help that as we're doing those things. And we do have a set of 70 citizens that have been we've utilized and will be utilizing as we develop the website so that we'll get real-time feedback. So that is another thing that we've actually been able to work with our communications team on and with MMP to deliver on. The other thing that we've done is utilized a lot of the leveraging that our consultant has provided to us with advisory groups that have been within the realm of technology and advancement that have provided us with very good information on what we should and shouldn't do, the lessons learned they've gone through. And these advisory groups that are very diverse. And I know Katie can talk to a lot of that technical expertise that we would not normally have access to. working in isolation of what we do normally.
No, but thank you, and I appreciate your passion and your knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Miller, Ashley.
Thank you. Good conversation and good points from all the counselors, and thank you for your presentation and your feedback. I do think this sounds wonderful, and I'm not discrediting that it is wonderful. I think it's great to always increase technology and provide that to our city. I just I guess my reserves are kind of in line with Councillor Barnhart. Is just you know, when I look at seniors, for example, you know, I know my grandmother, for example, she's 83 and just loves her iPad. But unfortunately, the knowledge on technology isn't necessarily there. So I think what I'm hearing, and it sounded like, you know, they have an opportunity to come in and see someone face to face in order to access or I guess educate themselves and then understand. I just wonder how that will affect seniors, for example, or people that are not technically inclined in accessing information. And, you know, it's a whole scary world to them sometimes. So I just want to be mindful of that. I know one of the community outcomes here is to increase trust and openness with citizens. So I guess can you elaborate on how you plan to do that, especially for ones that rely on those face-to-face interactions and don't necessarily know how to find out the events in a community without reading the newspaper, for example. So if we're relying on technology, how are you going to increase that?
With there's many different activities. One of the things that we were focusing on other projects was to actually educate and work with citizens to show them what kind of technology is available. That's only a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
What we want to do is we don't want to remove the face-to-face at all. But what we want to do is actually when they come into a location here, we're providing them with a little desktop that we can actually walk them through, same way they would go through the library. If they want to learn, we will provide that. If they don't feel that they're ready for it or want to do technology, we'll still service them at the front counter. So we're not trying to push the technology. What we're trying to do based on the public engagement we've seen is technology is wanted. And that 24/7 to do their business online was one of the drivers that put us where we are today with what we recommended.
Right.
We'll still not remove the newspapers. We still have to have that balance. So, I'm passionate about technology, yes, but from an administration standpoint, we need to service all those needs and we'll just balance it as we shift. And we're going to have to sometimes pivot and say, no, we need more of that face-to-face in this area because they don't have access to.
Absolutely. And 93% in this presentation says 93% of the seniors are utilizing internet at home to access this, and that can include immobile people, people that might not necessarily be able to come into the office for that education on technology. So, those are just some of the things I saw. And I would like to, I'm interested to see what the change and the benefit will be to the community. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Councillor. Immobile.
We'll get you there.
New term today. Any further questions from councillors this evening for our presenters? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation. I'll ask for a motion from council to accept the digital master plan as report as information. Councillor McCook, Kat, please.
I move that the November 22, 2022 report presentation of the final digital master plan be received as information.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion, council. Seeing none, I'll ask you to vote on the motion. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is 6B, Beaumont Blues and Roots Festival Society Report. Mr. Cornell, I believe you're presenting, so please speak into the microphone, identify yourself for the record, and you're free to begin when you're ready. And please have the mic in front of your face. It's very directional. Thank you.
Sounds good. Right, my name is Jeremy Cornell. I am the president of the Beaumont Blues and Roots Festival Society, and I'm here to present our report for 2022. So thank you to the members of council and mayor for having us here today. It's been a long time. So first, a little brief catch up on the last few years since we've been here in person. As you know, we had a small event in 2020, which had a capacity of 200 people. That was after planning a major event for 2020, which we had to cancel, which resulted in a lot of difficulties for us. In 2021, we advanced slightly to a event of 1,500 people, which we sold out, which was great. We still had some protocols in place for COVID during that event, and it was a very successful event. And then in 2022, we had no restrictions in place, so we had planned to return to a full festival. Our capacity target was 3,500 per day based on our 2019 results. We had some contractual obligations from our canceled 2020 event that we had to fulfill for 2022. And then we had the challenge of re-engaging with our audience and volunteers after a long break and a lot of uncertainty in the air. Ours was the first major event kind of in the capital region, being in June, to follow all of the restrictions being lifted last spring. So there was still a lot of hesitancy by many people and many questions we received about COVID protocols and that sort of thing. We had decent pre-sales in the spring, and people seemed very engaged with returning to the full festival experience. Overall, usually we come here with a lot of bright, shiny news and great results, but this was a very difficult year. It was a lot of challenges for us, and we're still dealing with a lot of those challenges. The weather on the Friday last year was the worst we'd seen in 10 years for the most amount of rain, and the wettest we'd had since 2012 when we had to cancel due to rain. That affected our walk-up sales and our on-site sales, including liquor especially. We had a number of challenges resulting from supply chain issues in the world that impacted us with many last-minute changes. Our electrical supplier, we ended up having to cancel 24 hours before our gates opened and had to hire a new vendor out of Red Deer with very little notice to bring in electrical supply and power for our event due to unexpected costs and supply chain issues. We had no refrigerated truck lined up until the last day due again to a shortage of vehicles in the marketplace. We had a number of increased costs for shipping, travel, and other items. And then we, during the event, had a number of travel challenges for the actual acts that were traveling from across Canada. We did end up with everybody getting to play, but it was down to the wire for a number of them who were stuck in Toronto due to Air Canada issues. Our Saturday ended up being a very decent day with a great turnout, but we still fell short of our 2019 level and goals. In the end, we had a number of unexpected costs that hit us, again, very last minute. We had a budget in place and we had contracts in place, and then a lot of, as I mentioned, the electrical and other things changed at the last minute. We had an electrical budget of just over $7,000 and actual costs have come in at close to $30,000. We had a stage rental budget of $2,500, which is what we've been paying for the last 10 years, but unfortunately that stage was no longer in commission and was sold. And the only equivalent stage we could find was $18,000, so a huge increase. We were hit on the day of the event with a requirement from the city of Beaumont for us to have an engineer sign off on the stage, even though we had stamped engineered drawings for the stage. That was an additional $3,000 that we had not budgeted for. Our merchandising costs were up about 20%. And then due to the ongoing hesitancy and weather issues, we saw some attendance sales down about 25% from what our goal was. And then also sponsorship challenges. A lot of our sponsors were having a difficult time in the economy as well and reduced their level of sponsorship for 2022 from what they had been doing in previous years. At the end of the day, we had revenue, and I don't have it written down here, about $350,000 and, or sorry, $270,000 and costs of about $70,000 more than that. So we had a shortfall of about $70,000. So how we are managing our shortfall. Subsequently, after the festival, there was a federal government COVID relief and re-engagement grant that we applied for and received in the summer for $35,000. So that covered half of our shortfall. And then we were also successful in receiving a Travel Alberta grant for $10,000, which helped a lot as well. Additionally, we have had great success at our Halloween fundraiser. We saw a record attendance at that event and managed to raise over $4,000 in net revenue profits for which we've applied to our outstanding what we owe. So we've negotiated payment plans with many of our vendors and suppliers, and we are working closely with them to kind of get through this challenging time. For 2023, we've taken into account these supply chain issues and issues with the economy and the increasing costs for everything in the world right now. We've cut our entertainment budget for next year by 33%, and using our reputation that we've built over the last 15 years and the relationships that we have with many of the booking agencies across Canada, we've still managed to assemble a really great lineup for next year, which we're very excited about, even though we are spending quite a bit less money. We have a plan in place to self-perform all of our electrical next year using a volunteer electrician who's joined our team on the board and using volunteers. So we anticipate spending closer to what we had originally budgeted of about $7,000 versus the $30,000 for that. We're working with a number of new sponsors, including a new co-sponsor for the main stage to help mitigate the increased rental costs for that stage that we require. We're exploring other grants at the provincial and federal level. We have increased our ticket prices this year, and we put tickets on sale early. We started selling tickets in August. Usually we don't start till January, so we have a lot more time to get sales generated. We've seen a good response so far. A couple of hundred advanced weekend passes sold already, which is great considering they don't even know what they're in for because we haven't released any bands or anything yet. As additionally, our sponsorship levels have been adjusted by increasing them as well. So some of our sponsors are returning at slightly higher levels to kind of generate more funds that way. We have our VIP cabana tents that we sell every year. We've increased the price of those and managed to already pre-sell 7 out of the 11 tents that we have available. So, and we have interest in the other ones. So that's great news. People are very excited to come back, which is good news. And the other request that our board wanted us to bring forward is some discussion on the City of Beaumont partnership level and a potentially consideration for an increase in that from the $50,000 we've been receiving since 2013. Justification for this is the growth we've seen since 2013 when we entered into the funding agreement. In those 9 years, our attendance and budget has grown by about 30%, while the City of Beaumont contribution has remained consistent. So as the revenue and that increases, and obviously that percentage, there's a gap there from the percentage you were sponsoring to what you're currently sponsoring. And we would also like to cite some other research we've done on similar events in the province, including the Bear Creek Festival in Grand Prairie, which is a very similar size event to ours. And they've consistently seen some increases in their municipal funding. They receive $100,000 from Grand Prairie, which is obviously a bigger municipality. We understand that. But also the Edmonton Folk Festival, who has been around for 40 years and still receives consistent increases in their municipal funding from the City of Edmonton. And economic conditions being what they are, we're seeing these additional costs with no reprieve. So yes, we would like to bring forward for consideration that the City of Beaumont consider increasing your sponsorship from $50,000 to $70,000. And like I say, we have a plan in place. We're hoping to be here next year with much better news and a much better result. And I just remind everybody here that we are all volunteers, everybody on the Beaumont Blues and Roots Festival Committee. Our committee has increased from our humble beginnings to, we now have 18 people on the planning committee, all taking different jobs and contributing greatly. So that's a great news story. And we have received nothing but positive feedback from our festival, from the community as a whole. So that's all I have. Questions?
Thank you. We will take questions from council. So starting with Councillor Miller, Ashley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Cornell, for your presentation. The first things first, the increase in $20,000, that is not in this report, correct? So that is a separate conversation.
It'd be part of
This
budget.
is
It's
just-
also a verbal request now, not anything in writing.
Yeah, okay, so I can't speak to that one right now. I think that's a subsequent ask. The information you just provided, I don't see that anywhere in the report, and I'm having a really tough time. Like, I'm a visual person and I like to see it all laid out. I don't see any of it actually provided in this report. Am I missing something?
And we'll be providing our written financial report once we complete our year end, which will be by the end of this year, which as we
Okay.
usually do. Yes, and unfortunately the date changed for this presentation and I was out of town on work and we were just
Mhm.
kind of ran out of time to put much together other than a
Right.
quick verbal.
Yeah,
report.
and
So-
that's fair. Life is just absolutely crazy right now, so I totally understand. I'm just, from my point of view, I like to see everything kind of laid out clearly. It helps me understand it better. Then I can have, some more questions for you with a little bit of meat. So what you presented to us tonight sounds really wonderful. I would just like to see it in front of me, so I have time to review it. So
Yeah.
that's my comments, and I love Blues and Roots Fest. It's an excellent festival. So thank you for all the work you guys do to put it on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions from council? At this point? Councillor Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for coming in tonight, Jeremy, and putting forward what you're able to do. When it comes to the next installment of 2023, so, the verbal ask of more funds is one thing, and it can be considered at budget. Has the board thought about any other ways that the city could help the festival? I know there's some in kind over the years that has occurred, with transport and tables and that kind of stuff. But is there anything around communication or support or any other things that you guys have been able to dream up that might be ways that the city could support that wasn't just purely cash as well?
The city has always been a great support. As you mentioned, we have use of the city stage as our second stage, and we have there's a number of items like picnic tables and garbage cans and all of
Yeah,
those sort of
stuff they're
things,
moving
and
around,
the
yeah.
use of the park itself. So we do receive a great support from the city. As far as promoting and that sort of thing, we're always open to exploring options. We'd love to see the city more involved in promoting the festival. We have a dream of someday there being a sign as you enter town, home of the Beaumont Blues and Roots Festival, like there is in other municipalities that have major Canadian festivals. So things like that's, long-term dream,
Yeah.
but
You betcha. Yeah. And I was kind of thinking about going there too, as you look around with sponsors and legacy sponsorship and stuff, right? I think to Councillor Miller's point, if when you get the finances together and, feel free to include other information in what you bring back to us. And, if there are things in there that might be worth considering or, might be helpful to support, or if you guys come up with some new ideas, don't be shy to put that in there. There's always a conversation to be had. So thanks for coming out tonight.
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart. Kathy?
And thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation and all the hard work. I do know how much goes into that, and I can see behind the stage there just how much is going into it on the daily basis and years before. So I really do appreciate all that work. Your ask of 70,000, is that for 2023 or for after the current agreement is over?
we haven't, it's just something that came up at our meeting a week or so ago. And so I'm just bringing it forward for information at this point, and we will discuss and put forward an official request once
So
we
at
figure
this
that out.
point,
Yeah.
it's not an official request. You're going to follow up with something.
I mean, if you want to write a check, we're happy to accept it. but-
I don't think I have that power. But if you would please maybe follow up again, if you're sending in further information.
Yes,
You know, be more specific as to what that would be, what year that's meant for and
Yes.
things like that. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Cornell, for your presentation. At this point, I'll ask council for a motion to accept the report as information. Councilman Newkirk, Steve?
Yeah, thank you. Happy to receive the Beaumont Blues and Roots Festival verbal report as information tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Just one question. We're going to have the financials by the end of this year. That's the expectation for the financials.
yes.
Okay, good. That'll be very helpful. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, council, please vote. And that carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Our next presentation, I believe, is also Mr. Cornell, which is going to be the Beaumont Arts Council annual report. Are you involved in that presentation? Anybody from administration involved, Ms. Winter, on this next item on our agenda? Ms. Winter?
Thank you. I believe Mr. Cornell is going to be speaking to it, and administration is here to back him up if council has any questions.
That's what I thought. I just want to get that clarified if I could. Thank you. 1 second here. Yes. Ms. Mancher, do you wish to begin the presentation? Or Mr. Cornell, who is going to go first? Or together? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Joanna Manter, Team Lead Arts and Events. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. This evening tonight, Jeremy Cornell is here as the Chair of the Beaumont Arts Council. The Arts Council is relatively new. It held its first meeting in November of 2020. Since that time, the committee has worked to develop terms of reference, and has this year begun the first ever Beaumont Arts Council grant program. And that is perhaps the highlight that we will address this evening. Mr. Cornell will also be able to speak to other priorities and achievements of the council and its volunteer members. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Cornell.
Okay. Yes, as mentioned, I am also the current chair of the Beaumont Arts Council. As I have been involved in the formation of the Beaumont Arts Council over the last number of years. It's been a long process to get to where we are at, and we were glad to see 2022 finally having some meat to it, and all of our planning and recruitment over the last few years has started to led to some positive results. As Joanna mentioned, we had $50,000 to award for arts funding through the first Beaumont Arts Council granting program. So through the year, the first kind of quarter plus a little bit of 2022 was spent creating the grant funding process and the application process and forms. We used the community grants funding as a reference point for that. And Joanna and her team were a huge help in putting all of that together for our committee. We created a process and guidelines that align with the arts policy as well as the needs of the city of Beaumont. The first round of applications was received in May and early June of last year. We met and awarded $30,000 in funding at the end of June, which was distributed in the summer. The second round happened in September, where we awarded the additional $20,000. I don't know the total, but I think we were close to 100 and the requests for funding were in excess of $100,000 anyways, which is great because obviously the word is getting out to the community, and there's a lot of arts groups and individuals who are keen to receive support. The recipients came from a diverse cross-section of the arts community, including graphic arts, performing arts, music, dance, theater, individuals and groups and organizations. So it was great to see a wide cross-section able to be supported through this funding. For 2023, we are continuing to work on funding requests for as the money becomes available for the arts funding. We're also continuing our recruitment as we're still short a few members to have our full complement. That's been an ongoing process through advertising and word of mouth, just trying to get some engagement and get people involved in the committee. And we're additionally looking to form a subcommittee to look at public art and how to spend the funding that will become available in 2023 for public art. So I think that kind of wraps up where we've been for the last year or so. So that's all I have.
Any questions from council on the presentation as just presented moments ago? Councillor Newkirk, Steve?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for that presentation. And I really did like the breakdown of what went where and to who for that, to allocate the 50,000. So thank you very much for that. Just to dig into the request that came in over $100,000. You had said there was, graphic arts, performing arts, all kinds of things. Was it all community-based groups that those asks were coming from? Or are there groups outside of Beaumont that are looking to bring something to Beaumont for residents? Or, what does that look like?
This year's requests were all from within Beaumont, both groups and individuals and organizations. So nothing from outside of the city at this point in time.
Gotcha. One thing that might be helpful for me anyways would be to understand what all the asks were and where they came from, right? Like if we can quantify, or speak for myself, if I can quantify the need and the groups and the volumes and all of that stuff, it does make the conversation a little bit more vibrant around, looking at providing more for these types of things. But if I don't know what they are, I can't just give dollars or suggest or lobby council to give dollars for something that we don't know what it is, right? So I would say anything you can do to arm us with more information around that need and desire in the community would be helpful. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tessier, Renee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. Just asking about the vacancy. So it seems like a quite large board, obviously, and there's lots going on. Are we struggling to find people, or especially with the big ask for extra additional funding, like for the $100,000, are we struggling to find people to help out?
It's been a challenge to find people interested in joining a board. A lot of the people we have on the board are people who you see on multiple boards. That seems to be how it goes, but I believe we have 3 vacancies, if I'm correct.
4
vacancies. So yeah, we continue to recruit and do what we can to try and fill those spots.
So is it a total of 10, including yourself?
That's correct, yeah.
And have you ever had 10?
No.
Are you finding the workload is excessive for the 6 of you?
I think we're managing. We're doing the best we can with what we have, but it's nice when we're deciding on these who's going to receive some of this grant funding. Obviously, the more voices you have around the table, the more diverse the opinions, and it's obviously going to be more fair distribution of funds just because there's more input. So I think that would be nice.
Okay. Is there anything, maybe a question for administration, that how are we marketing this committee, and how are we trying to reach people to come volunteer? Is it just in La Nouvelle type of thing?
Sure, through the mayor to Councillor Tessier. Currently at this time, the primary recruitment efforts come directly from other members that are on the board themselves and through the Beaumont Society for the Arts. Administration will gladly take a look and review options for how administration can support the recruitment of members more proactively and to give some credit where credit is due. The members that we are seeing on the Arts Council are very active within the community, within their number of them come from other arts organizations as well. And with the relaxation of some of the restrictions from COVID, we're seeing a resurgence of activities and events. And so I would take the opportunity to commend all the volunteer hours and work that's being done by the members of the Arts Council for the Arts Council itself and also for the other arts groups that they sit on. And it is daunting. These are, I would say they're practicing artists, and the nuts and bolts of the paperwork behind the scenes can sometimes not be the fun stuff to do. So, and there is a lot of work to do. It's very exciting. And I think that we're at a really wonderful point of where the efforts that the Arts Council has taken events so far will continue. So administration will actively support the recruitment of new members for sure.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much for that answer. And it is a lot of work to be on these committees, and I appreciate all the work you guys do. I just don't want you to get burnt out and then all of a sudden there's 2 people left type of thing. So I'll leave my comments at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, thanks for presentation. We appreciate that. As a member of council, willing to move the adoption of the report as information. Councillor Barnhart, Kathy?
Yes, Mayor, thank you very much. I'd be pleased to move this recommendation that the November 22nd, 2022 Beaumont Arts Council report be received for information. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you again. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll ask council to vote on the motion. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is, let me just here, 6D, Art Center Steering Committee Final Report. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, but I'll leave both presenters, are here. And we'll just begin with that in a moment here. Mr. Suter, do you wish to sit where you're sitting? Mr. Gerard, do you want to take the seat here if you like?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Paul Suter, Director, Recreation. This is a very arts-heavy agenda, Council, this evening. It's exciting to see growth and interest in that. Carl Savard is the chair of our Performing Arts Steering Committee, and he's here. He's got a short PowerPoint that we'll run through. But before we get started, the purpose of tonight's topic is for council to receive the committee's final report on the work that they've done. And this committee started back in April of 21. And I'm going to speak for myself as well as the members of administration that have been involved in this project. I can't speak highly enough of the committee members. We have one also in attendance here, Barb Willis over there hiding, not wanting to be recognized. But the amount of time that the volunteers put in on this committee is tremendous. We were meeting every 3 weeks, and most of those meetings, especially for the first 6 months, were about 2 hours in length, if not more. We wore out minute takers, to be honest. So there's a lot of material. In your agenda package, you'll have the final report, and I wouldn't expect the entire package to have been read by council. It's quite exhaustive, but it also includes appendix from the feasibility study that was done earlier by RWDI, as well as BR2 site analysis. The earlier work from the Beaumont Society of the Arts, that led to this conversation being started in the community. All fantastic work. And this steering committee was really formed at council's direction to pull all that, validate that if need be, and come back with 4 recommendations. And we're pleased to be here this evening with that in the final report. And with that, I'll turn it over to our chair, Mr. Savard, to run through the PowerPoint. Thank you.
Mr. Savard, please proceed at your convenience. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I was hoping that he wasn't getting it off that easy, but that's okay. We'll get him another time. Thank you very much and good evening. Appreciate the time to come for a few minutes and present to council the final recommendations and the official recommendations of the steering committee. I want to say that I really enjoyed the almost 2 years on the steering committee. It was a great opportunity, a great learning experience. And I look forward to maybe having other opportunities in the future to do the same thing. Let me see if I can forward this. So our committee consists of 6 individuals. Barbara Willis, who is present with us tonight, Chantel Fortin, Grant Tolley, Hunter Gates, Tiana McLean, and myself. And we couldn't have done this work without the ultimate support of the City of Beaumont representatives, Paul Suter and Karen Gilbert. So we really appreciate them, and we sure enjoyed the friendships and the collaboration that we've built over that time period. They were, to us, they were instrumental in getting to where we are. So over the last year and a half, we've reviewed existing documentation. We've debated, we've collaborated, we've pondered, and we've come up to what we think are great recommendations from this committee. This committee has also had the chance to visit a few of the art center infrastructure within the Edmonton region, and we've also had the chance to visit some of the sites that were under consideration as part of the recommendation. We've come a few times to council to update and to provide updates, and we're grateful for that. So during that time period, during the last year and a half, so we've engaged with individuals and groups, we've met, and we've researched as much as we can with the information that was available at our disposal to come up with recommendations that we feel are reasonable and realistic. Yeah, no problem. All good. So the committee was tasked with looking at 4 different areas. One was a site. The other one was the type of building that would best fit the community. The third area was the operating model and how this building would be operated. And the fourth one, of course, is a very important one, is how are we funding this project? So we looked at these 4 areas, and each of them had different objectives. And we, through our research, deliberations, and so forth, we came to 4 realistic recommendations that we believe are good for this. The first one is related to site. We looked at several sites, and more information, more details are available in the final details report that has been filed with council. But we looked at several sites, and out of these sites, we had them all graded based on a matrix, so they were all equally graded. And out of those sites, 2 sites really stuck out. First one was the Parc Gobey, or Gobey Park, and the second one was the Colonial Park. Very close in the matrix, but the recommendation from this committee is the Gobey Park. It's a good fit. It's within the art zone that is defined in the planning, and it's a good fit area and right size for this type of project. As far as building is concerned, we looked and we kept our mind open. So we looked at different possibilities. One was a standalone building. And the other option is the possibility of maybe joining this type of building with other potential infrastructure, like a library or new city hall or things that the city may need that that may come together. We looked at sizes, and depending on these models, the Pucka Bay would fit these two alternatives. And we looked at the operating models, and there were several operating models, but I think the best one that would fit this community is called the rental presenter model, city-owned and operated with an advisory board. So the advisory board would be tasked to provide direction to this art center, and would be a direct link from council to the art center as well. And the fourth area was funding. We looked at different ways that were available to fund, and there are some ways to fundraising, debentures, federal and provincial grants that may be available, sponsorships and municipal partnerships that could be looked into. Of course, we also, depending on the building type, building alternative, there could be more opportunities for funding depending on how the city council decides to which direction to go. So there are some possibilities to do that as well. So these are the recommendations that were requested or mandated through the steering committee. And we believe that we've achieved the goals. And with the presentation of the final report, I believe that this brings our committee's mandate to conclusion. And the next item moving forward is the dissolution of the committee based on the council's recommendations and votes. We appreciate the time and the support for this committee and the opportunity to get together and offer these recommendations. Thank you.
Mr. Var, first of all, on behalf of council, previous council who set this up and the current council, we are very keenly aware and very appreciative of the amount of hours and time and effort this committee's put in to bring this final report. It's very in-depth, it's very significant, has lots of moving parts to it, and the effort is not unnoticed by council, and our administration has done a lot of work in this as well too. So on behalf of council, thank you very much for the work you've done. With that, I will open it to questions from council. I've got a couple of questions myself, but I'll save mine to the end. So with that, may I begin? Or Mr. Suter, do you wish to add anything to Mr. Savard's presentation at this point before we go to council? Do you wish to add anything, or are we okay to go to questions?
No, I'm good, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, just in case you wanted to add anything that you may have wanted to touch on. So we'll begin with Councillor Barnhart. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Savard and Mr. Suter and staff and everyone, Barb, and all of the volunteers that put so much time and effort into it. It was daunting, and when council set this up, previous council, it was like, I think we all thought, oh my God, I mean, can anybody pull this rabbit out of the hat? Like, it really was very difficult, very complex circumstances. And I'm amazed when I read this how simple it seems in terms of the answer of a complex situation, in terms of a recommendation to back up. Yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense in that location and the operating model. I guess the piece that I'm left with, okay, now that has to come back to council, and I totally understand why it's that way. The funding, I guess I'm wondering, is there anything you can share from your conversations about that? Or was it basically, we can't even begin to go there, so didn't bother, which I doubt, knowing the people on the group, I doubt that was a conversation, but a little bit of insight into what thoughts were presented, or any ideas, recommendations there in terms of where the money could or should come from and how we might approach that.
Our discussion related to funding was very broad, because one is we don't know if or when this type of project would become reality. And as you probably know, I know provincial and federal funding and other fundings come and go. So we're not exactly sure what will be available, when it will be available, and how it will be available when and if the project comes to fruition. So our discussions related to this type of funding was very broad because of that fact. Even though there's different avenues of funding, by the time it happens, these funding options could be gone and there could be something else, and we just don't know. We just don't know. We know that the work that we've completed is just the first part of such a project. There's a lot of work behind to make this project a reality. So I think sometimes we've probably had the easiest part of this. But there weren't too many in-depth discussion because there's too many unknowns related to funding.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Miller. Ashley, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yes, this is a huge or a whole lot of information. And thank you guys for what you do. I know this isn't something taken lightly, and you put a lot of hours into this. I was just wondering if you can elaborate on the considered partnerships with other groups, and how that would complement them, some of the other groups, also how those discussions have went, or, if you can elaborate on those discussions with, for example, the library.
Right. We understand that that the library is also looking at a project.
Yeah.
And the city has been growing very fast, which means that maybe council will be looking at a different location for themselves. Don't know. So there's different possibilities, but sometimes as you put multi infrastructures together, you can see some savings in those as well, because there's less wall to build when you bring buildings together, and there's different systems that can be aggregated together. So there may be some savings, but again,
yeah,
we defer to council.
Right. I was just wondering if you could elaborate on those conversations. But if you can't, that's totally fair.
Yeah. We've talked, but we haven't met as a committee with other committees or other groups. We just have some information, basic information, and we just try to bring it together in some ideas.
Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Suter, you speak.
Through your worship to Councillor Miller, I'll try and elaborate a little bit on Mr. Savard's answer there if I can. Direct conversation with the library board, for example, did not occur. However, we were very aware of their ask to get more space. And that's been something that's been on the table before council from last year, I believe, if not earlier in conversations. Part of this all ties into what facility needs the city need, the pressures are going forward. And this project, should it be something council wishes to do at some point, will roll into that bigger package. And administration has a lot of work to do to bring that all together. But from a site perspective, both RWDI, BR2, and this committee all looked at synergies that could be realized here. We looked at the community center, existing infrastructure, or new school builds, for example, the library site, this site here. They were all evaluated and definitely in the mix. However, the site itself, no, was not the top choice, but a future partnership still very much on the table. All those moving parts still have to be ironed out, and it's beyond the scope of this committee at this point. But I think Mr. Savard is right to say that there are synergies with building a building, of course, with other uses, if you will, and shared space, and different, which also leads to funding, quite frankly, because you may be available, other grant options may be available if there's different operating units within the walls, right? So There's a lot of layers to that, and it's not something we can really speak to directly right now with any
Okay.
certainty.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Good word, synergy. That was a good one. Would it be fair to ask if the Go Bay site, for example, was considered, or sorry, is it large enough to perhaps have that partnership with the library, or we'd have to look at something else? Is it fair to ask that right now, or is that just not on the table?
If you look through the work that BR2 has, which is an attachment in here, you will see potential conceptual layout on that space that would potentially accommodate multiple operational units in one building. Yes.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Suter. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to Councillor Tessier and Van Newkirk, I'm just going to piggyback on something. I'm not asking for clarification this evening, but at some point, I know part of the funding requirements are suggesting grants, provincial grants or federal grants. I've never actually seen, I'm asking for a list of ideas. I have no idea how many grants are out there. If there's two main grants we could apply for, or there's several grants at the federal provincial level, could we somehow maybe arm administration with an idea what kind of grants are actually out there at the present time that our building could apply for? I know, I'm not sure I'm asking the right question, but I don't know if there's really one provincial grant that this would fall under and two federal, or there more. I really don't know that. So I'm not asking for the answer tonight, but perhaps a follow-up. There's not too much work. Give us an idea of what kind of grants, or maybe Mr. Blanco might know his experience, what kind of grants are out there for performing art type facilities. Just a quick observation, not asking for the information tonight, but something that was in the report, but I'm not saying the report's deficient, just that I get an idea that we talk about grants, but does that mean there's one grant available, or there's a myriad of grants we need to pick and choose which we could apply for? That would help me understand.
Your
Mr.
worship,
Suter, would you wish to comment on that?
I certainly do. Yes.
Thank you.
You're right. There is a multitude of grants, both provincially and federally, depending on through Heritage Canada. There are cultural space grants available. There is Canadian federal infrastructure grants available. And it all depends on what you're building and who's going to run it, and who's going to own it, and who can then is applicable for each grant. So until that's kind of ironed out, then it's hard to say which grants we'd be eligible for in this case, but there's definitely options on the table.
Okay, that's a fair answer to my question. I appreciate that. I'll go to Councillor Tessier, followed by Councilman Newkirk. Renee, you have the floor. Oh, sorry, hang on. All good. There it goes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation once again. And you can tell a lot of work, like I reiterate what Mr. Suter says, and just how much work has gone into this. It's noticed, and I can just see the passion of your group coming through the report. So this is a big report to do for a city that's, you know, been looking at an arts facility for years and years and years. So it's great to see the numbers. I'd be interested to see, obviously there's more information coming from operational costs, and I saw the organizational chart, and that's not a small amount of personnel either, right? So lots to look at. Obviously in our city, we know we have to build a high school, whether it's a joint school or not. Have we looked at any options with partnering with the province's build and building a theater system with them? Has that been done anywhere, or has that been looked at, or is that just such a far stretch that that's something that just doesn't occur?
I believe if I remember well, at the onset of our meetings, we did look at the BR2 report, and there were some information related to the possibility of having such a building attached to an existing infrastructure like a school. We looked at it, and we considered it and debated it. And in the end, we found it to be not a favorable option. There were questions related to usage and ownership that were just not quite favorable. There could be more discussions, but we didn't see the favorability.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Obviously it's 100% a need in our community, and it's got to get done. So they're going to need theater space too, because the old high school is, if anyone's been in there, the theater room's about probably half the size of this chamber. So I was just really interested in, do new high schools build theater rooms, or do they build any sort of arts facilities anymore? And if there's, okay. All right, thank you. That's good for now.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And it goes without being said that, you know, thank you to yourself and the committee for all the work around the thank yous isn't enough. Was fortunate enough to sit on the Recreation Parks group as well, and we would get some updates from time to time from members that wear multiple hats and frequent all of the groups in Beaumont. So thank you very much for that. I think besides the, you know, appreciating all the work that's happened, the page that I most looked forward to was, you know, the recommendations page, you know, that section 5, right, where we talk about a site and a venue and an operating model and funding, right? Because there's so much work that went into figuring those pieces out that does lay a good foundation for, you know, evaluating the site and figuring out how big it should be and what type of an operating model. There's been so much work done now that, you know, as we figure out how to make something like this come to life, the foundation is here, and we just grab it and we go with a few of these pieces. So thank you very much, and appreciate all the work.
Thank you, Councillor. Excuse me for the questions. If I can just add one question, if you don't mind, just to clarify. I believe the venue recommendation is under 3.0, which on page 5 talks about a seating minimum of 350 to 400 seats. There's a list of bullet points, of course, in the report, which I'm sure you're very aware of. And also going down the list, the versatile secondary performance education space, 150 seats. So that is the recommendation the committee has for the size and venue and so on. That's the same recommendation, correct?
Yeah, we went through a list of items.
Yes.
That we would like council to consider in this type of building for the community. And these were the 2 rooms, one is being the main theater area and the other one being a smaller area where there could be a practice hall or something like that, where you know, that could be used outside of the main venue.
Okay, perfect. Councillor Cook, you have a question, Kat? Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I won't reiterate the thank you, but obviously an incredible amount of work. And just piggybacking a little bit on the mayor's question, I guess, obviously budget is a strong consideration when we look at projects of this magnitude. Would the committee consider, or what would be the impact, I guess, going with a model that, so the option that is recommended is the modest one. Would the committee consider a Spartan, or what would be the impact moving forward if we went with something like that? Would we outgrow it within a certain amount of years, or?
In our deliberations, we looked at all 3 sizes, and based on city growth, demand from the arts community and so forth, and the amount of years that this building would be in use, we looked at what was reasonable for size so that it would accommodate the community's needs the longest possible time without having to do an addition or to do anything to the building, because as you know, construction costs increase almost every year. And you know, if you can build something that will meet the needs of the community for 20, 25 years before you do a rehabilitation to the building, then there's significant value, I believe, in doing that and in looking at this type of building. And our recommendation and in our debate, we believed that the middle of the group one was the best approach or the biggest bang for this type.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. See no further questions. Again, Mr. Zavar, I want to thank you for your presentation. It's not easy to present to council on such a technically challenging report in terms of all the options and all the moving parts. So you did a great job. Thank you for that on a personal level. So having said that, I see no further questions from council. So as a member of council willing to move the report to be received as information. Councillor Miller, Ashley.
Sure. I move that the November 22nd, 2022 report, Beaumont Arts Center Steering Committee final report be received for information.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion. And that carries unanimously. Again, thank you, Mr. Savar and Mr. Suter. Thank you for
Thank you,
presentation.
members of council. We
Thank you very
appreciate
much. So with that, we normally have break around 7:30 for 10 minutes. Let's break now and reconvene at 7:30, okay? Thank you very much. 7:30 sharp.